welcome back to BTR Boxing Podcast, the big fight preview for Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker, the rescheduled bout coming this weekend. We're really excited for this heavyweight clash. Main focus of the conversation in the big fight preview today, but it's a big weekend. There's some really good fights happening this weekend. This is the main card that we wanted to cover, but the other card that we would have been covering, and we might have even, done a double header in terms of what we class as big fights, would have been Lee Wood and Mauricio Lara, but Lee Wood sustained an injury last week, has had to pull out of that fight, so as a result, the card still goes ahead, but we've got Maxi Hughes, who was on the undercard, moved up to main fight against Kid Galahad, the IBO title that Maxi Hughes won in his last fight, defending against Kid Galahad. And then you've got Hannah Rankin, Terry Harper for the IBO WBA Super Welterweight titles there, which I think is going to be another great fight, which we was talking about a couple of weeks ago. You've got obviously Siobhan Clark on that card, so there's quite a bit to talk about in terms of this weekend's action. Shakur Stevenson, he's also in action as well on the Friday in America, and then you've got a certain Mr. Money Mayweather fighting in his exhibition as well this weekend. We're not going to touch too much on that because this is just what he's doing. He's doing all these exhibitions and they don't really interest us at this stage. It's not like he's coming out of retirement and fighting like an Errol Spence or a Terence Crawford. He's just having exhibitions and making a shitload of money like he likes to do all the time. So we'll keep the focus on the big significant fights that are happening, and it all begins with Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker, WBO interim world heavyweight title, an interim title that's been placed on the mantelpiece for this particular fight because it's classed as vacant, and one of these two men will walk away with it, which puts them in good stead for a shot of the WBO title in the future, depending upon what happens in the top of the heavyweight division over the next 6 to 8 months, of course. But this is the big fight Joe Joyce needs. We've been asking for Joe Joyce to get a fight against a fighter who is either a former world champion or legit world title contender, and this is the one. This is the one for me. Bryant Jennings was once a world title contender, but Joseph Parker, I still think, I wouldn't say he's at the peak of his powers, but he's 30 years old. He's certainly a guy you go in there with if you want to prove you are in with a shot at potentially becoming a world champion, because himself has been a world champion and himself, of course, have fought some of the best names in the division. So it's a really interesting fight from Joyce's perspective, and we've been asking for it because Joyce, we always say, he's getting on. He's 37 now, Joe Joyce, and he doesn't seem to have any intention of leaving this sport unless he at least gets his shot at a world title. This is a great opportunity for him. Joseph Parker, what will he bring to the table for this fight then, Johnston? Because Joseph Parker is a guy who's a very durable opponent, doesn't go down that often, likes to see fights out till the end. He can bang a little bit, but will he be able to overcome the onslaught and the relentlessness, and some might say slow motion tactics, of Joe Joyce?
They might be slow motion, but he does bang a bit, Joyce, and we've seen that in previous other fights. I mean, the Dubois fight in particular, I mean, he busted the young boy up, didn't he? Aged him, basically. And look, you know what Joyce is going to bring, but Parker, I think for me, he needs to probably go back to sort of how he used to fight. He needs to come in a little bit lighter and work behind that jab and be on his toes a little bit, be in and out, throw some combinations and get out of there. If he stands toe-to-toe with Joyce, I think he might be the one that ends up getting hurt. But saying that, look, these guys have got rock solid chins, the pair of them. Yeah, Parker's hit the deck a couple of times, but he's got back up. He has got a tough chin. He really has. And I think, and Joyce no doubt has as well. So it's an interesting fight. I think it's a significant fight. I wouldn't say it's like a great fight, but it's a very significant fight because the winner potentially gets Usyk for that WBO title later on next year. And the reason why I say that is because obviously Joshua and Fury probably will be fighting in December by the looks of things. Is looking optimistic, which therefore means Usyk saying he's going to come out in February, March. This fight, perfect timing. The winner has got that title chance in the horizon, no matter how they get on against Usyk, and we'll obviously have our own thoughts against whoever the winner is, but the significance of this fight for these two, and as you say, at the age of the pair of them, especially Joyce wanting to really push himself to get himself into title contention, then this is a huge carrot for the pair of them, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge moment for Joe Joyce. He's got to win this fight. For me, you don't. I know he's undefeated, but you don't normally say this about a fighter unless they're coming towards the end of the career. It's like it's a must-win
True.
fight. But I do feel it's a must-win fight for Joe. He's got to win this fight. He's 37, getting no younger. Sometimes age ain't nothing but a number, but we've seen it just recently with Golovkin, and we did our big fight reaction show. How Golovkin just seemingly looks like he's now aged, and he's looking every bit of his 40 years of age. Joe Joyce is only 3 years younger, but yet he hasn't had as many fights. Yes, he's got this fantastic amateur pedigree. As we know, he fought Usyk in the amateurs and had a right good to do with Usyk in the amateurs. A great fight that you can watch on YouTube. But Joyce is at the point of his career where it's now or never. He's got to dispatch of Joe Parker. He's got to either dominate him on the cards, which, looking at Joyce's record, doesn't happen very often, or he's got to completely stop this guy and be relentless like he has been. He's been very relentless. In all the fights that he's contested in, he's got 13 knockouts in his career. 13 knockouts in his career out of 14 fights for Joe Joyce. He's relentless in the ring, regardless of his methodical, sometimes albeit slow style. He doesn't stop. He stays there. He's only had the one fight with Bryant Jennings in 2019 that went the 12 rounds. He's proved he can go 12 rounds. So I don't think stamina is an issue, and I think it's quite clear stamina isn't an issue, but it's the same for Parker. Stamina isn't an issue for him. I just think we've seen Parker go down. We've seen him get hurt on a couple of occasions, and I think Joyce could be the man to actually completely stop Joseph Parker. I genuinely do. That's probably an early prediction so far because we've got so many other fights to talk about. For me, Joe Joyce will beat Joseph Parker, and I think he'll do it, and I think he'll do it in emphatic fashion. Joe Joyce needs this win. Joseph Parker also needs this win. So it's a big fight in the significance of their careers going forward. And I'm excited for it because, to me, at the end of it, we'll get to know really who looks like the next legitimate challenger who we haven't already seen have a crack at one of the world titles. I mean, you look at the other guys and you look at the names of Deontay Wilder, who was fighting Robert Helenius. You look at the names of, obviously, Andy Ruiz, who just beat Luis Ortiz. And you look at a few of them names around the heavyweight division that are still there among the top three. Joe Joyce is not far now. He's pretty much just behind them. He's the next sort of name I start thinking about. It's like, where does he sit? If he wins this fight against Parker, you can certainly start thinking about him with any of them names, because there's no time like the present for him now to be in the ring with them names. I think he's got the experience. I just think a fight and a statement against Joe Parker will certainly give him more ammunition to say, look, I can do this. I can beat one of these top guys. Depending on what you think about that, that's fine. You can have your own opinion on it. But I think if he wins this fight and does it in a fashion, he certainly puts himself right out there and he opens up that heavyweight division, and there's great fights out there for him. And I'm talking like it is a solidified Joe Joyce win. It's nearly said Joe Parker, Joe Joyce win. Two Joes. So, Joseph Parker, I'm just going to switch this back to you before we move on. Joe Parker, what are his chances? How does he beat Joe Joyce? Because we've not seen him beaten yet. Do you go back to his amateur days and look at how he was beaten then? Or do you just look at what Joseph Parker's done in his professional career and sort of assess how he could possibly beat Joe Joyce?
Yeah, I think with Parker, he's one of those fighters where he has some good fights and he has some bad ones, to be fair. Not terrible, I wouldn't say terrible, but there are sides to him that are beatable. And we've seen that in all of his other fights. But I do think for him to beat Joyce, I think he has to be the one on the back foot. He has to be the one, sort of, as I say, throwing the combinations, get in and out. He could probably do that for half the fight. It's just after a while, what we've seen with Juggernaut is he does wear down his opponents and he will continually come forward. And it's a matter of how many of those rounds sort of Joyce can pick up in between, where I believe that Parker will probably take the first sort of 4 or 6 even, if he does fight that way. Unless he decides to go toe-to-toe with Joyce and make it a very entertaining fight with two guys with solid chins, that I think plays into Joyce's hands. But I do think he has rounds off. We've seen it against Chisora. We've seen it even against Joshua, even though Joshua didn't really put much pressure on him. I still feel that he has those times out. Why he does, he did the same thing. And I think that's where Joyce has got to take that opportunity when he has a couple of rounds off 2 or 3 rounds in between and really put the pressure on Parker. And I think that will be the moment where he may start taking the fight back into his favour. And then I think towards the end of the rounds, I think you're moving into, I'm guessing it will be a 12 rounder. So anything from 8 to 12, those last 4 rounds are going to be quite vital for the pair of them, because I think it'd be quite even at that point. Parker may just be ahead. And I think he will tire. And I think you'll get a big, I said it last for the Golovkin Canelo fight. I thought we'd have a big fight, big round in that 12th round, but it didn't happen. I think you might get one here, but I don't think any of them are going to get stopped, Sean. I think Parker's strong enough and able enough and solid enough. He might hit the deck, but I don't think he gets stopped. I think he will keep going, and I think he may hit the deck. He may need to take a knee with relentless pressure. And he may even back Joyce off. He can't allow him to get in any rhythm. If Joyce, I know he's slow, as you say, he's methodical, but it's easy saying that. We watch it on the TV screens and we're like, yeah, this guy's so slow. Why can't they just move out of the way from him? It's not as simple as that when you're in the ring, because he is a seek and destroy kind of guy. And his engine is at one standard and it stays the same throughout for 12 rounds. You know what you're going to get with Joyce. And it's easy to say, yeah, you just box and move. Parker can't do that for 12 rounds. I don't think he will. So I think that second half is going to be important for him to make sure he keeps away. So you could get Parker nicking this. I'm going to go with Joyce just because it's over here. Just a split decision.
It'll be interesting if it does go the 12 rounds. I can't see it. So I think I'll be going for a late Joyce KO in terms of when we do our little prediction leads that we've got going on outside of the podcast. I think I'll be looking at that, to be honest with you, because I think that's what will happen. I think he will wear him down. I think you'll probably get a TKO stoppage, not a KO. He won't. I don't think he'll just outright stop him. I think he'll punish him. He'll get to the point where the punishment will be that much where either the corner throws in the towel and says, you know what, you've took too much here, or the referee has to step in because Joyce is just so relentless. I just can't see it going any other way. I mean, Joyce hasn't lost yet, and this could be the moment where he does lose, and I could be looking at this next week thinking, bloody hell, I completely wrote Joseph Parker off here. But I just can't see a way past Joe Joyce winning this fight, because I can't see how Joseph Parker is going to be able to put an effect on Joe Joyce. He hasn't got this sort of concussive punching power. So if he hits Joyce, he might stagger him and hurt him a couple of times. But Joyce seems to be able to walk through that. I mean, he won't walk through that forever. Of course he won't. But if he knows he can walk through it, he will walk through it, and he'll continue that pressure. And I think that's what the vulnerabilities are in him. Is like, it's vulnerable watching him getting hit, but the way he's still able to go through his opponents is just something to behold. And I think this will be another test of that, and whether he can do it. And if he can, and he does it successfully, then that's when the conversation then turns to the bigger fights. So we'll get to see. I think Joyce stops him late. I think that's my prediction for the fight. I'm not going to give a round specifically, but I think sort of 9 to 10 is sort of the round region where I'm thinking that's going to end that for particular fight. So yeah, we'll see how it goes down. But the one thing I've noticed about this particular card is he's actually a pretty decent card for a change from Uncle Frank. It's probably going to go on till early hours of the morning like his shows always do, but there's some really good fights on this card. Really good fights. The most notable inclusion on this card is Amanda Serrano defending her featherweight titles against Sarah Mahfood, who's 11-0. She's returning to the ring. She was obviously supposed to be fighting on the Jake Paul Hasim Rahman undercard at the start of August. She's now got on this card. Interesting that obviously she's now coming on this card and she's going to be working with Frank and not Eddie on DAZN with Katie Taylor, which will be interesting to find out what her perception is after that. But it's a big inclusion for this card. It's big for her to be on this card. It's a big moment, and it's a really good inclusion to the card, and it helps the card because there are some other good fights on here that I'm going to mention now. A fight to look out for this weekend on this card then. So we've talked about Serrano, we've talked about Joyce and Parker, Eko Asuman and Samuel Antwi for the British welterweight and Commonwealth welterweight titles. I think he's going to be a potential show stealer this weekend. That's another great fight to be looking out for. Michael Magnesi against Anthony Kakachi, IBO World Super Featherweight title on the line. Anthony Kakachi's looking for this huge fight after his fight last time got cancelled, much to the dismay of him and his family. He's now got this huge fight for an IBO title, and it puts him on the map if he wins it. Certainly does. Another big fight on this card, which I consider it to be big, doesn't really sort of resonate maybe with the wider audience, but two local guys that have been up and coming for quite some time in Nathan Heaney and Jack Flatley. Now, I've met both of the guys. I've seen the careers from the off. this is going to be a really good fight. These are two fighters that won't take backward steps. I think this is another fight that you should be tuning into the card for. The rest of the card, for me, it is standard. It is prospect versus journeyman. And, you know, I can sort of understand that every card can't always be made up of huge fights. The other notable fight is Raven Chapman stepping up a big level against Jorgelina Guenini, who's 10-4-2, WBC International Featherweight title up for grabs, the vacant title up for grabs here for Raven Chapman, so it's a big step up for her in a fourth professional fight. But the rest of the card is sort of made up of not so much prospects in Mark Heffron. He's on the card. He's 28-2-1. But then you've got James Hennigan, Callum Thompson, Amar Akbar, Tommy Fletcher. You know, these are all prospects of Frank Warren's that he's trying to move up through the ranks and nurture them and marinate them like he likes to do with his fighters. But I'm just going to round it up by saying I'm actually looking forward to the card. Like, you only get one or two fights on Frank's cards, which are, you know, you think, yeah, these are pretty decent fights. There's about 4 or 5 here where I'm genuinely excited to tune into them.
Yeah, it's a quite a deep card, isn't it? And Usman and Antwi is definitely a fight I'm looking forward to. But the Heaney and Flatley fight, you know, because they are both come forward fighters, is going to be thoroughly entertaining. So, and obviously the addition of Amanda Serrano is a great coup there. So look, it's a deep card. There's going to be a lot of fights on here. I think the main event's going to be a decent fight, and I think as we've pointed out, that Usman and Antwi, Heaney and Flatley, I think they're probably potentially one of those two or both will be the show stealers, if you like, in terms of how the fight plays out. But either way, look, yeah, it's good to see a deep card. It's good to have 2 heavyweights potentially going to be fighting for that WBO title. I mean, what a huge carrot it is dangled in front of these 2 fighters. And I think because of that, it gives this fight a little bit more substance than just a normal, you know, 2 top 10 guys having a go at each other with nothing really in the horizon. So that brings something to this fight. And yes, it's going to be very interesting, and it will shape the heavyweight division once again. We'll have an idea of who's going to go on a fight Usyk and who won't.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point to make. Well, it's not the only card going on this weekend in the UK. That one's in Manchester, in my hometown. But in Nottingham, you have the card, which, as I mentioned earlier, was supposed to be a headline by Lee Wood versus Mauricio Lara, which was a fight I was really looking forward to. Gutted that it's had to be cancelled for injury. But I'm excited for Maxi Hughes Kid Galahad, because Maxi Hughes is a fighter who's gone on what you like to say, Johnston, this purple patch as of late. And he's beating guys that I think necessarily you wouldn't have expected him to. Many people felt he was at a certain benchmark and he'd never surpass that. He's now an IBO World Lightweight Champion, beating Giovanni Staffron to get that title in 2021 and defending it successfully against Ryan Walsh in his last fight earlier this year. This fight with Kid Galahad is going to be interesting because Kid Galahad, for me, overall, I would say he's a better fighter than Maxi Hughes. He's certainly got that level of skill higher than him, but Hughes is very effective at what he does in the ring. So it is going to be contrasting styles in this particular fight. And of course, you've got to remember, Galahad's coming off the back of that loss last November, shock loss as well, to Kiko Martinez. He was the IBF champion, remember, as well. That's the thing. He was a world champion like this time last year, and then got that shock defeat to Kiko Martinez, and now has nothing. Josh Warrington now holds that title again, and he's got nothing now. And this is a fight where he needs this win. He needs it, because if he wants to become world champion, or should I say one of the big 4 world championship belts, he's got to at least get this IBO title to give him some sort of sway going into a potential fight in the future if he wants to fight Josh Warrington or wants to fight Lee Wood, for example. So there's certainly a lot at stake here. I think what's also interesting about it, and the elephant in the room with this fight, is that Kid Galahad is the one who's moving up to challenge for this title, which is surprising, really. Did he have a problem making weight for the Martinez fight? Was there an issue? Was that why he just got obliterated by him? Has he been struggling for a while? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It certainly makes me wonder, like, why he's jumping up in weight. And it's not just one. He's jumping up 2. So he's gone from featherweight to lightweight to challenge for this title. So that also doesn't really ring alarm bells as such, but it kind of puts a red flag on that for me, thinking that maybe he was struggling with the weight. but I still think he's got that sort of level of skill that he's capable of winning this fight convincingly. But that being said, this purple patch that Maxi Hughes is on, I think he's got that effective aggressiveness inside the ring to potentially do what can be done to Kid Galahad, which is to negate his skills and stop him, smother him, get on his chest. It's going to be interesting. I'm actually looking forward to it. The more I talk about it now, the more I think actually this might be a better fight than what it looks like on paper.
Yeah, it's interesting how just what a year can do in boxing. If you took this fight, Kid Galahad, and he took on Maxi Hughes before that Kiko Martinez fight after he beat Jazza Dickens, you would probably be saying that this is a straightforward Kid Galahad victory, whereas Maxi Hughes is in good form. He's a southpaw, so they're both the same age. He's as you mentioned, he's on his purple patch. I think for Maxi though, I think Maxi fights better against aggressive fighters. I mean, we see that against John O'Carroll, where the guys that come towards him, he can outbox them, and those that are not quite on his level in boxing terms, he was able to outbox them. Kid Galahad's a different kettle of fish. The one thing that goes for Maxi is the fact that he has been laid out. He got literally rendered by Kiko Martinez and one of the knockouts of 2021. It's spectacular, wasn't it? Literally come out of nowhere, threw out of his ass. The poor Kid Galahad was absolutely sparked. So that confidence has probably been knocked out of him, and probably the reason why he's decided to move up a couple of divisions, just try and as you say, maybe that was an issue. Maybe he will never admit it. Maybe he may admit it later on in his once he retires. But maybe that was an issue, and he was punch resistant, wasn't there. But I think this is a perfect fight for Kid Galahad. It's a good fight for him because, Maxi has this IBO title. All right, it's not one of the big four, the divisional titles, but this is a layup, surely. In no disrespect to Maxi, honest to God, he's on great form, and his confidence is going to be sky high against a guy whose confidence isn't as high. So that may give him the advantage in this in some people's eyes. But for me, if Kid Galahad goes back to his boxing skills, sort of like what he did against Josh Warrington, I think he wins this fight and he wins it comfortably. But you just don't know. Sometimes knockouts like that can really shake a fighter. Maxi is not a big puncher, but if he does land one, it doesn't mean he can't hurt you. And with his negativity and knowing, flashbacks of that knockout, maybe that could hinder Kid Galahad. But for me, I think Kid has the boxing skills. He's the better fighter. He should be winning this. If he doesn't, then he needs to question himself and take a good look at himself in the mirror. Because really, as I say, no disrespect to Hughes, he should not be at the level as Kid Galahad.
You say that, but this is boxing, and boxing works in mysterious ways sometimes, doesn't it? I just don't understand the move up for 2 weights. I understand maybe 1, but 2 weights is quite a jump, really.
Yeah,
it's significant. And obviously, looking at the depths of the lightweight division, I was saying earlier, I was forgetting about the jump when at the moment I was talking about it. I was talking about fighting Josh Warrington again, or looking at fights in the featherweight division. If he wins this title, the sort of names that are around in that top 10 are like Joseph Diaz, Isaac Cruz, Vasyl Lomachenko, George Kambosos, Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis. These are all the names that are above. You've got Zar Abdullayev as well. You've got Nakathila as well in there. So these are the sort of top 10 guys in the lightweight division. Is that really his intention to stay up there? I will be genuinely interested if it is, because there's no feeling out process either, and that's the other thing that sort of raises a red flag to me. Is like when a fighter struggles to make the weight, they normally have a feeling out process up at the next division, don't they? Like they'll go up and have a couple of fights with journeymen and sort of test the waters as to how they can carry the weight in the ring, and how they manage to rehydrate and all the sort of nutritional factors of it. But he's just jumped up 2 weights straight away to go for the opportunity. Is it just the fact that he's been offered a chance for the IBO title? He's been said, look, here you go, I've got a fight for you here. It means you're going to have to jump up 2 weights. Is it an Eddie Hearn special? Because we know how he loves making people jump up in weights. Is it an Eddie Hearn special where he's going, look, you've got this opportunity here, right, against Max Hughes, and he's probably said to Kid Galahad, look, I think you can beat him. You can put your name back on the map. He's probably filled him with a bit of confidence again, thinking, you've got the skills to beat him. You'll be a champion in the lightweight division. You'll have a bit of sway. You'll have a bit of opportunity to fight bigger champions. it doesn't surprise me in the slightest if that's a similar conversation as to what's been had with Kid Galahad as to why this fight happens. And then from Max's perspective, this is a huge, huge win for him if he takes the win. It's a huge win for him because then it shows his intention in the lightweight division that, even though this is a guy that's jumping up, he's beating a guy with the skills and ability that you wouldn't have expected him to go and beat. And like you're saying, how you feel Galahad on his day wins this fight, no problem. But if Maxi wins this fight, that certainly puts a really good feather in his cap going forward. So really interesting fight, that really interesting headline act on the DAZN card, and it's supported by a really good female fight between Hannah Rankin, Terry Harper, IBO, WBA super welterweight titles on the line. Obviously Terry Harper has moved up in weight after her loss, a controversial ending, not so much controversial from Baumgardner's side, but the fact that Baumgardner actually sparked her out, was one of them shock knockouts of 2021. And then she's come back, she's moved up in weight, and she's decided that, I'm going to take this opportunity and fight Hannah Rankin for these titles, who, again, she's on a little bit of a purple patch in her career, after having lost to, like, the better fighters in the division, so the likes of Clarissa Shields, and she's obviously fought Savannah Marshall, and Patricia Bergholt, who fought Natasha Jonas recently, so, she's at a point in her career where she's looking for that big fight herself. And Terry Harper's a big name here in the UK in the female side of boxing, and a name that we all recognise and why it will sell and why tickets will sell for it. But from Harper's side, it's an opportunity for her to become a two-weight world champion. Huge opportunity for her. Again, it'll all be about how she can move up in weight. Can she carry any power up with her? Can she affect Rankin? Her boxing ability is really, really good. But I think Hannah Rankin, even though she's got 5 losses on her record, I think she's an underrated fighter. And you look at the people she's lost to and look at where they're at, and it makes you think, well, she's only really losing to the top fighters, and the fighters in the divisions that are being classed as some of them even the greatest of all time. So when you look at it like that, it's not an easy fight for Terry Harper, but it really will tell us whether she can come back from adversity and become a two-weight champion, or whether Hannah Rankin's just at this point of her career where she's having a great purple patch like Maxie Hughes. And these two fighters could end up going on to win. The fighters that maybe people class as the underdogs, even though they're the champions, could go on to put on great performances and get victories. 2 interesting fights there, Johnston, on that particular card, and yep. It's ones that I am going to try and tune into, but obviously there's a lot of channel flicking going on because of the Joyce Parker card, isn't there? So it might be that I might end up getting to watch them on the Sunday instead, or later on in the night. It depends, but I'm excited for the event this weekend. The fights that are on, there's some really, really good fights. Siobhan Clark, as I mentioned earlier, is on this. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Solomon Dakriz, 4-0, looking to move 5-0. Good opponent in Dominic Akalade. I think he's a decent opponent, decent step up for Dakriz. Then you've got Cyrus Patterson, Rhiannon Dixon, and Nico Leviars, and Junaid Boston, all on this particular card. So they're the UK cards. They're the main fights over here in the UK. Any word, obviously, on Harper versus Rankin just before we mention Shakur Stevenson fighting on Friday?
Yeah, just quick. I mean, it is pretty similar to the Galahad situation. I mean, Harper's coming on the back of, I know she fought once more, but she's coming on the back of a devastating knockout loss. Hopefully that win she had in her new weight division gives her a little bit more confidence going into the Rankin fight. But Rankin, as you suggested, she's not going to be an easy fight, but it's a good fight for her to have, for Terry Harper to go into on the, to try and prove herself in this division. I do feel she will. I feel that Terry will come away with the victory, as I do with Galahad, but anything can happen in this sport. So, I mean, we'll jump on it. But as you say, it's a decent card. I mean, look, the fact that Galahad's moving up, 10 pounds he needs to put on, maybe, you can imagine him walking in as a lightweight in many of those featherweight fights anyway. So, maybe £10 to Galahad probably isn't that much of a big deal. So it's going to be interesting. That's what makes it intriguing, especially.
Well, Shakur Stevenson's fighting on Friday, so early hours Saturday morning for us. It's on ESPN in the USA, And he's fighting Robson Conceição. This is the same Robson Conceição that gave Oscar Valdez life and death not too long ago, September of last year. Oscar Valdez got the UD, but I recall it being actually quite a close fight. I know that he got deducted a point for hitting behind the head in round number 9, but I remember it being a rough fight for Valdez, a rough, rugged fight for him. And I think with the type of fighter that Conceição is, I think it probably sets Shakur Stevenson up for another good performance. He got the sort of slick boxer puncher against a brawler, really, a slugger in Robson Conceição. So I think it lines up nicely for Shakur Stevenson to get a victory here, and then again just continuing on to look at potentially these big fights in the division, or will he make that jump up? That's another question that remains as well with Shakur Stevenson. Will he jump up and join that lightweight foray? What do you think about this particular fight then?
Yeah, I think I mean, Conceição is the guy. Obviously, Valdez. Many feel that Conceição won that fight. I mean, watching it back, I felt like he probably did deserve it. Some people thought it was a straight robbery. I don't think it was a straight robbery. I do think he deserved it, but there were rounds in there where maybe Valdez, you could explain his decision. It's not like the catch-all win against Taylor, for instance, but it was close, to be fair, and Conceição probably was robbed of winning a world title. So he's probably looking at it, it's probably a harder fight than a Valdez one, if you like, because he's a come forward fighter as well, pretty much like Valdez. But when you think about Shakur Stevenson, his distances, his jab, his footwork, and Conceição's a come forward fighter. It just plays into Shakur Stevenson, into his game plan. He just will he deter from what he normally does in outbox fighters? Will he put his foot down? I think people tend to really want to see that from Shakur. So maybe he could try and do something like that for a change. And when he's far ahead, to put his foot down on the pedal and really go for the kill and try and get rid of his man rather than just outbox him over 12 rounds. Hopefully it might happen. I can see this being a pretty straightforward win. Conceição's a tough guy, come forward fella, as we've said, and he will take a lot of those whacks that Stevenson's got in his arsenal and keep coming forward. So I can see it being a lopsided, pretty much every single round going to Stevenson as he shows the world once again how much of a fantastic fighter he is. And that's the only way I see it, mate. I really do.
So one more fight. If anybody is remotely interested in this particular fight, we mentioned it at the start of the show. Boxing legend Floyd Mayweather will take on his second exhibition bout of the year against the Japanese MMA star Mikuru Asakura on Saturday night. Is anybody actually remotely interested in this? Because I know I'm certainly not. I just thought, with it being Floyd, and obviously give him his due, he's done what he's done in boxing, albeit some of it, not so great in terms of our perspective. We haven't got a great opinion of him, I think, for many reasons, which we've mentioned before. We'll save that for another day. But is anybody really interested in this fight? Because I know I'm not, and I'm not tuning into it. I'm not interested in this whatsoever. I won't even watch the highlights of it, because I just think it's just Floyd Mayweather making money like he always does. Is he ruining his reputation? Like I said, I don't think he is by doing this. But not me personally, because look at all the great boxers of yesteryear. Muhammad Ali was a prime example. He used to do all these crossover wrestling matches, boxing. It was just sort of a lot of crossover exhibition spectacles. And I think this is all this is. People are paying good money to get Floyd Mayweather to come and fight these random crossover fighters, and he'll just continue to look like he's not lost a step. But at the age of 43, 44, he's just making more money, isn't he? He's just continuing to just grind that money in. Money Mayweather, the machine keeps rolling and rolling. He'll do this till he's bloody 60, Mayweather, if he still can.
He will, and he's as fit as a fiddle, Ray Mayweather. You can't doubt his physical attributes, and he's constantly training, isn't he? He's always running, and he's out all the time. Keeps himself in fabulous shape, and that's credit to him at his age. But look, it's just an exhibition, a way of making some money. He won't harm his reputation, because that is his reputation. He's the money man, isn't he? So anyone who wants to give him some money for anything, he will take it. It would be good to see him in an actual MMA fight, though. How about getting in the octagon and actually getting down and fighting one of them boys? I think we'll give him a lot more respect if he did that, wouldn't we? Rather than when he fought McGregor, flip the tables and go and fight McGregor in his own sort of in his octagon rather than the boxing ring. But look, it is what it is. He's just going to keep making money as much as he can. But then it does question you. That you makes you wonder. Maybe he hasn't got that much money if he keeps taking these fights. I don't know. Maybe the offer of $50 million or 100 million, whatever he's getting for it, is just too good to turn down to beat up an average Japanese fighter.
Well, this is it. I suppose look at it from his business perspective, which is what I try to do now and again. Is if you know you can go in there at 45 years of age and still go and take the piss out of a guy who wants to come and cross over and make it a bit of a spectacle, and there are people out there stupid enough to pay the money to do this, i.e. the promoters and i.e. the people that are supporting and backing this fight financially, then if I'm Floyd Mayweather, I'm going to snatch that with both hands, go in there, take the piss out of this Japanese MMA fighter, walk out of there with all my money and continue to live beyond my means, and then come back a year later and fight somebody else and make just as much money. This is literally rinse and repeat for Mayweather, and this is what he'll probably do, like I said, till he's bloody 60 years old, because of the fact that he can do it, he can make money from doing it, he can live the life he wants to live, the lavish lifestyle. I never agreed with any of it, and I'm not going to bore everybody with the reasons why. My thoughts on Mayweather are the way they are, but he's doing what any smart business person would do. That's all I can sort of leave it on that note. Is he's doing what a smart business shrewd person would do, and he's making money in a very easy way. So I suppose fair play to him from that perspective. And that's it. I've got no other thoughts, feelings and opinions for the big fight preview for this week. The main fight is Joyce versus Parker. BT Sport, really looking forward to seeing if Joyce can now start to live up to that expectation of moving on to world heavyweight title glory. Joe Parker stands in his way. Big fight this weekend. Make sure you tune into it. And make sure you've subscribed to us on Apple, on Google. You can find us on any available podcasting app out there. You can subscribe to us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Please make sure you subscribe to us on all them channels. And that's pretty much it for this big fight. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for our reaction show.